Learn more about getting your favorite brands into games, NFTs, and the metaverse. My name is Darren Smith. I'm the VP of Product at Epik. Epik is the leading B2B NFT platform that works with AAA game companies and giant entertainment IPs to create in-game NFTs and marketplaces. We have years of experience as a digital licensing agency putting brands into games. Our current client roster includes some of the biggest names in the games and entertainment industry, such as Tencent, Garena, Universal, and many more. A little bit about me. I'm a video game industry veteran, having spent 20 years at Nintendo working on the development of many game consoles such as the Nintendo 64, the Wii, the DS, as well as apps and games for all those platforms. I joined Epik in 2018 with the mission of bringing NFTs into games. Today, I'm going to bring you something at the execution level. We're going to discuss first the psychology behind the NFT hype, second, the business of licensing, and lastly, I'll give you a licensing playbook to help you get licensed content into your game. So let's start with this. We've all heard of whales like Justin Sun and celebrities like Steph Curry and Shaun Yue paying lots of money for NFTs like rocks and bored apes. The question is, why are these people getting involved? Why does somebody like Steph Curry now use that bored ape to flaunt it on Twitter and use it as his avatar? Well, that's because people pay real money for virtual items for the same reason they pay real money for consumer commodities, namely status, identity, membership, class, and performance. What Steph Curry is signaling to the world that he's in the know. He knows what's happening in NFTs and crypto, and now this becomes an extension of his identity. Does this sound familiar? It's the same reason in psychology that drives people to buy name brand stuff. Brand affinity is a way we signal certain messages to the rest of the world. Are you a Ferrari guy or are you a Tesla guy? Are you an iPhone user or an Android user? When we're talking about brand name items, we're really talking about IP licensing. The term licensing means the granting of rights to use another party's intellectual property in your own products or services in exchange for financial considerations, typically a payment or royalty. So when you make a piece of digital art, that's your IP, you own that creation. Now you can sell and monetize it. This idea of IP ownership is the same whether you're talking about the creator economy, something where you and I make something, as it is for big brands like Disney and Marvel. So as you can see, everything NFT is IP, it's all licensing. So how do IP owners look at NFTs? For licensors, the important thing for them to understand that NFTs are a completely new product category with very interesting features that make them extremely powerful. First, we can verify ownership, and the NFT and wallet act as a bearer certificate. Second, NFTs are digital, which means it can represent anything. It can contain a reference to any kind of value. This all means that we get to do really cool things with your product and merchandising strategy, as well as your marketing and engagement with your customers. When you combine these elements as brand affinity, a new asset class, and a new product category, you come up with something very powerful, and this offers endless possibilities for you and how you incorporate IP. It's really up to your own creativity. The next big area of opportunity for licensing in NFTs is, of course, the metaverse. We strongly believe that NFTs will be the unifying feature and force behind the interconnectivity of metaverses, and really, it's the fabric of the metaverse itself. It's the digital stuff that's open, interoperable, transferable, and permanent. Licensing and using IP in the metaverse can be extremely important for you from a business strategy, and may even be a necessity for you to bridge from the real world to the metaverse. NFTs provide that way to go between Web 2 and Web 3. You see Starbucks in the real world, and then you see Starbucks in the VR world, and your brain starts connecting the dots here. So, as I promised, let's dive into a quick playbook to help you get IP. I've created this 4-part licensing playbook. First, I'm going to talk about the field of play. Second, I'm going to introduce you to who the players are. And third, we're going to just discuss some strategies. We'll discuss whether or not you're ready for IP and what you can do about it if you're not. And last but not least, the end game. So let's talk about the field of play. What is licensing? A few minutes ago, I gave you a dictionary definition, but in short, it's paying to use someone else's IP in your own products or services. The concept is straightforward, but in all practicality, it's not always so straightforward. The not so well-known truth about licensing is not what you know, It's not just about how much money you have either. It's about who you know. Licensing is really interesting because it's never been disrupted before, even in the age of the internet. It's all relationship based, and getting access is the key. It requires relationship. And of course, it's all about legal rights and contracts. So let's talk about the future. That's kind of the history of licensing. It hasn't changed much, but what about the future? What about blockchain? Of course, yes, blockchain and licensing are very compatible because licensing is about legal contracts and rights, and smart contracts give us a way to improve the creation and enforcement of those rights by removing some of the friction and overhead. And that's the future we're working towards at Epik, using tech solutions to solve some of the complex workflow in licensing. So next, we're going to talk about knowing your opponent. Let's talk about the players. Let's start with your opponent, the licensor, the IP holder. One of the most important things you have to do to understand is to understand the mindset of the licensor. You're going to be in a negotiation with them, and you need to know their biggest motivations. Yeah, money is important. Money is definitely a consideration. But the bigger the brand, the less they may be interested in money and actually care more about their reputation. Different licensors also have different strategies for how many deals they want to do in a period. This could be a strategy thing, considering the frequency that they want to license. A good analogy here is that they'd rather be Robert De Niro appearing in a movie every few years instead of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's literally everywhere all the time. There are a lot of things that are related to licensors' mindset that could or could not be outside of your control. Some of that could be like internal structure inside the company. Is it one owner, or is it a family-run IP, or is it a huge publicly traded company with a licensing committee? It's not a simple situation since every IP is different, and you should understand them the best you can when you approach them. This brings us to another player who develops the IP strategy. Call it the quarterback. The quarterback is thinking about who's doing all this activity for you and who's the one that's going to help you navigate all this stuff. Licensing can be really complex. So, what's your plan? How are you going to access the IP owners? What should you be paying? What are the terms? Who's calling the plays? These are all under the quarterback's authority, and it could be internal or external to your company. Internally, you might consider bringing in the expertise in-house and have somebody on your team do it, developing your own business development team to handle this area. Alternatively, externally, you can work with an agent. There's certain advantages to working with an agent. A good way to look at a licensing agent is the same way you look at a real estate agent when you're trying to buy new property. Just like a real estate agent who do the heavy lifting and find the right property for you, a licensing agent can speed up your process and add some valuable insights you wouldn't normally have. Is an agent necessary? Of course not. Just like you can buy a house without a real estate agent, it's possible not to use a licensing agent. The decision's up to you, and it's based on your situation. So long story short, consider who's going to be your quarterback. But here's a reality check. Not everyone is ready to become a licensee and to attract licensors to work with them. Why? Well, because it's not always about the money. Brands are also looking for the right fit, the right reputation, and the right timing. But that doesn't mean you can't get there. There are some things you can do to improve your chances. And what we suggest is start gathering the data. Build some compelling metrics for engagement and another KPI just beyond the money. Be open-minded to the IP you want. In the marketplace, some of the best performing collaborations we have are with content that's not perfectly in line. It's the fun stuff that you wouldn't normally see. And next, you can join forces. You don't have to go it alone. Epik has been successful putting IP into multiple games at the same time under the same campaign. This is something you can do if you don't want to buy the IP on your own. So there's definitely ways you can get access to IP and increase your attractiveness to IP owners. Approach it like a journey. Just keep getting better and better until one day, maybe Disney comes knocking at your door. So the name of the game with IP is content, and there's nothing more exciting than new original content. And crossovers are an awesome way to create new content and new merchandise, and they're perfect to make collectible items. These crossovers happen in different types of categories. It happens in music when artists collaborate with one another. It also happens in fashion. Supreme and Louis Vuitton already did a fashion collaboration. It also happens in games. Game companies do it because it's exciting and unique. And it happens all the time. And that's an idea you can explore as you work with IP. So let's talk about the end game. One of the first things you should do when you start down the path towards licensing IP is to start by asking why. Why do you want to invest into licensing IP? What's your goal? In our experience, working with hundreds of game companies and marketplaces, the reasons we hear most often are: one, to increase user engagement. Brands give you more marketing tools to play with. Two, to increase user retention. Brands give you that fresh content that keeps players coming back. And three, to increase monetization. Name brands sell. There's an opportunity to capitalize on that. Another reason to license IP is to boost your company's profile. This creates more credibility for your company. Working with big brands definitely adds perceived value to customers and to investors. Think about all this before you start making big investments into IP. So to summarize this playbook we put together for you to help you with your IP journey, we have one, know and understand the field of play you're on. Two, know the players, pick your team, and most importantly, that quarterback. Three, execute your strategies. And four, start with the end in mind. Start by asking why. Thank you all. I hope you learned something about the business of licensing and how to make it work for your project. Come check out some of the cool stuff we're doing at Epik at epicprime.com, and I look forward to meeting with all of you again sometime.